Let's look at how the techniques, those exercises are going to apply to what you'll be see. I would be using maybe that effect right there, and then I would glaze over it because look at this here and this here. This is the same thing all the way across right there. And then I just came over with a very light value of maybe a light indigo and washed over it because I wanted to push that back. You can see how this color pulls forward. So that's why we're starting out with these exercises, is just playing around, getting familiar with it. And you might think this is really boring. I don't really want to do this, but it's going to put in your mind how you're going to approach something. Or if we even look at this, okay, so that is more of a wet into wet technique. Now, I think that's nice, but what happens is that can compete with our subject. And if we look at these hard lines, that can compete with our subject. But if I wash over that, if I glaze over that, then it's going to be soft. We'll have some of those lines. Or if I want them softer, then I'm going to go to something like that. So we're basically guiding the viewer like a Georgia O'Keeffe kind of thing. We're in there. We can see the color. We see the veins. The trap is that everybody is thinking, oh, I need to add every little vein. We don't. Just like with the background, let them use their imagination. We can see some shapes back there, but the crisp area is the flower. If we go here, I think that's a very nice composition too, but we have so much stuff around the background and they're so crisp that it all kind of is flat. It doesn't really have a lot of depth. And then here it's like, oh, those are really pretty colors. Again, flowers in a field, flowers in a bush. They don't need to think about it too much. You're going to have a different kind of reaction, but I'm going to just tell you what my immediate reaction is. I'm thinking I'm drawn to the flowers here and the color, and I see some darker areas back here and some soft areas there. But I do have a few leaves that still pull my attention. The color pulls my attention, but then I'm able to travel through the back of the painting. And again, I did not go through these very carefully this morning. I just grabbed them. The problem with this is that we have that big line, so I would change this, that big leaf, but you can see we have a very blurred background here. So we would use some of the techniques in the exercises, but they may not be a circle. They might be more of a leaf, like a rectangle. And what I'm drawn to here is this bud, and we have these petals that are kind of munched up a little bit. So I might decide to make them a little bigger if I decided to do that. And why I grabbed these is because we are doing that wild iris class, and I just happened to come over the mountain. And it's interesting about this particular flower that on the coast where I live, I mean, this is all the coast, but um, like I'm very close to the ocean, and all the iris are either like a very like a lavender or a dark purple, but you go over Mount Tam and then they turn into more of a mauve or a yellow. So, so that's why I took these here. But look at the background here. Now, if I was thinking about a composition, I like the idea of this being crisp. There's no real shadows here, so I'd have to think about, oh, there's no high contrasting shadows. It's all very soft. So what would I do? How would I work with those shadows? There's nothing that's obvious. So what I would think about, again, are my values. What do I want to pull forward? I want this to come forward. I'm going to go with a slight um, medium to darker value here. And my shadow, instead of having a hard line, is going to have a very soft line because I want the depth in the painting. And we also have this soft background here. The problem with this is that there's too much space around that. So we don't necessarily want it to be that way. And if we crop it, I think that's actually more intriguing. Do I want to have that much space on that side? I don't know, but just things to think about. And again, if we have a lot of space, we lose our subject. There's so much happening around it. It's kind of like, yeah, that's a flower, but it doesn't have anything to say. That's more intriguing. That's a flower. Okay. And then if we back out more, because this is the way I used to take my pictures, because I would think that that's really pretty, but I can't see any detail. And I can see a little bit of shadow, like we used to do the 4 by 6 inch pictures there. And that helped me simplify. And then if we look at this, you can see that's slightly darker. This has more light. So when you're looking at your object, think about, is there more light coming into that shadow? Does it need to be darker? And again, we have a lot of space around that. And that is the challenge about this particular flower. They're very spindly. So how do we make them interesting? And hopefully that inspires you with some of your images. And then with the same idea, okay, looking at these poppies here, they're delicate flowers, and I'm not necessarily going to go bold. I have gone bold with the background, more like this darker green back here, but there's so much to look at. And then this is okay. That works out fine. But if I want to change the feeling, let's see. Right. I think that's interesting. We have more of a blurred background. And then I would think about here, like if we look at this area, I would do a wet into wet application, like with a light green, darker green, and leave space like those little light areas, and then drop in a little orange. So we have a little soft line around there. So I want it to be more modeled in the background. It's because I would decide in this particular image, maybe I want to draw the attention to this flower. And if I want to push all of this back more, then I might glaze over it. Here, this is also fine too, but it's a very nice picture, but that's nice. This is more intimate. Okay, so let's look at the difference between like, yep, they're poppies. All that's fine. I like this. So I used to take pictures, a lot of pictures like this, and I didn't know what to do with the background here, because if you set it on the portrait setting, then you get something like this, to where this is more intriguing. It has a lot to say. We have the darker values here. We have the circles back there. They're very soft. I could put in a wash. I could lift color out. And if I have hard lines, I could glaze over it again with just water to soften edges. And then we have the attention on our main flowers right here. Okay, so that's a big difference. There's a change in the mood of the painting. And even this, I thought this was fascinating too, that one tiny little flower here with all of that. So I just looked at these this morning and I thought that was really neat and fun to do. If we have something like this and you're focusing on a flower, you can. But if you change it and use some of the techniques that you're just going to start out with, then you can really change the whole story of the painting. We also have something which is a Duralar wet media film. So when you have an image and you don't know what to do with it, if we use the Duralar wet media film, we can come up with ideas of what we can do in the background. Most of you have probably already done salt and spattering. Actually, I personally just like to spatter water on top of it. Salt is fine too, but if you're going to do that, you're going to have to pay attention to the drying time on the surface of the paper. If it's too wet, then it can explode and it doesn't really, I am not a whiz at salt. I don't really play with it that much. And then you can experiment with things like this, same idea. There's that Duralar wet media film right here, something like this. I'm just touching on this right now, something like that. You can always paint right over things. It's a clear acetate that accepts water and color. And that way I can see what would happen if I went darker. It doesn't really, it doesn't pill up, but it doesn't really do that much, but it gives you an idea of what it might look like. Or you can move it around. And then here, this is darker, changes the tone and feeling. To me, what I wanted to do here was be more elegant and be dramatic, yet simple, and doing the background, and then I'll come in and do the flowers. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found these tips helpful, and until next time, have fun and happy painting.